You are listening to continuing coverage of the trial of Chad Daybell from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast. Let's go back to the courtroom.
Now, your testimony is that you felt that Chad was using his religious knowledge or beliefs to manipulate Lori Vallow, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So he was suggesting that because he has so much insight that he's with these religious insights that he's able to convince Lori Vallow to stay with him because he has religious insight. Is that correct?
He was looked to as the visionary for this small group. And in that capacity, yes, used that to keep Lori Vallow in a relationship with him.
And the small group you're talking about, who did you discover was in this small group?
The inner circle is really a trio of Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, and Alex Cox.
Anybody else?
That's what I would refer to as the inner circle. There were others that were more peripheral.
Okay. And when you say more peripheral, shared some of the same religious views that Chad Daybell has.
Yes, I would describe them as adherents to Chad Daybell's doctrines.
How many of those do you talk about that are peripheral people that were adhering to it?
6 to 10.
Okay. Would Melanie Gibb be included in that group?
Yes.
David Warwick?
Yes.
Zaluma Pastenes?
Yes.
Okay. Melanie Boudreau?
Yes.
So this wasn't a large group of people then?
No. Chad Daybell spoke at a lot of conferences, and those were larger, but I can't speak to how his message was received by those people.
And when you say Chad Daybell spoke at these conferences, you touched on it a little before that maybe Lori Vallow wasn't believing everything that Chad was saying about this religious stuff, right?
No, I don't believe I said that. I do believe she believed pretty much everything that Chad Daybell said.
Okay. And maybe what you testified to is that you questioned the accuracy of it in one of the text messages that you put up on the board. Do you recall saying something about that? No?
I don't, if you can direct me to this particular message.
So Chad Daybell started writing these books well before she ever met Lori Vallow. He met Lori Vallow, correct?
Yes.
And he wrote these books about his experiences and about his theories and interpretation of what he felt was the teachings of the LDS faith, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Introduces facts, not in evidence. I believe counsel's testifying.
Sustained.
Well, he wrote a lot of books about religious issues, correct?
Yes, I think most of his books had to do with kind of an end of times theme.
And he would go on these various, go to various places and speak about his books and try to sell books.
Correct.
This was sort of a way to market or to make a living by talking about various religious feelings about religion. And then he'd go on and speak to people. And then in the meantime, try to make a living or try to make money selling these books to people, right?
Yes.
And the predominant audience that he would go to, these encampments, these gatherings, these various locales, for the most part, they were centered around Utah, correct?
No, I mostly, St. George, Mesa. There was one in Boise. So the Intermountain West.
And you beat me to the punch because I was about to start with Utah, then say Arizona, then say Idaho. But, the predominant audience that these books were marketing to were people in Utah, Arizona, Idaho, correct?
That's where he spoke, yes.
And they were predominantly marketed to people of the LDS faith, right?
I think so.
And they were marketed to the people who would want to go to these various seminars about preparing for the end of time, right?
Yes.
And these people weren't all members of a cult, were they?
Not to my knowledge.
And there were various audiences who would show up and listen to Chad Daybell talk and sell his books, right?
Yes.
So the fact that he has Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, Melanie Gibb, and David Warwick, who were friends of his, right?
Well, I think the relationship with Alex Cox and Lori Vallow was closer than what it was different than those other names that you mentioned and closer than friendship.
Right. But let's take, and we'll talk a little bit about the Alex Cox Lori Vallow relationship, but let's, as far as the other were concerned, all of the emails and all of the text messages, that you talked about, they had a recurring theme. These people were friends, right?
Yes.
And these friends talked about religious beliefs, correct?
Yes.
And these religious beliefs may not be what everybody else believes in, but they seem to have a consistent theme, and they were all consistent in believing whatever Lori, Chad, David, and Melanie were talking about. Would that be fair?
I think that's fair.
Okay. So when you talk about a group, we're really talking about a group of friends who have some maybe not traditional beliefs, but have religious beliefs, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the text I put up there from Lori to Chad, and it's the one line 836. Oh, wait. Let me know when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
You all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you take that as being would you take that as being in somewhat of a sarcastic tone?
No, I think Lori was pushing Chad and was serious.
Okay. So you should give all of your love and your attention to your wife and family. That's what she's saying, right?
Yes.
I'm just a distraction. Go have fun with your family. There's nothing sarcastic about that?
Well, if you look at Chad Daybell's reaction, which is that is so crushing and I feel so destroyed inside, I don't think he took it as being sarcastic.
Okay. I really do want you to. I just can't be in the way anymore. If things change, then we can talk. But we have nothing until things change. So she's basically drawing a line in the sand and saying, unless something changes, we have nothing to do with each other. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. So what she's doing is she's saying that unless something happens, either you divorce your wife or you kill your wife or your wife dies, you don't have me.
I agree.
Okay. And then Chad responds, I'm constantly begging for change below. You see that?
I do.
But I'm hindering your life and you deserve better. I love you so intensely. Okay. You see that?
I do.
The text following that, did any of them say, all right, I agree with you, Lori. Let's kill Tammy. You find any of those?
I found a number of texts talking about Tammy's death percentage in subsequent conversations.
Yeah. You're also aware that Chad Daybell, maybe you're not, but are you aware that since 2016, Chad Daybell had been talking to these public audiences about the fact that Tammy was going to have a very short life?
I was aware that he made those statements to particular individuals. I'm not aware that he spoke of that publicly, but yes, I know that he communicated that Tammy was going to die to a number of people.
Right. And these other individuals are friends and family of Chad Daybell, who are also friends and family of Tammy Daybell, correct?
That I don't know. I can tell you the ones that I do know that he spoke with.
Okay.
And I'm not aware that they knew Tammy.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily a secret that Chad was keeping with anybody since 2016, that he felt he had a premonition or a belief that his wife was going to have a short life, right?
There were certain people he communicated that to, correct.
Right. And when I'm reading through the text messages, and you went through your presentation, am I wrong when I'm reading these messages to read into this that Chad was waiting for Tammy to pass away, and that was what the delay was, correct?
It could be that, or it could be waiting to take action.
Okay. So we don't know what it was, right?
From the investigation, I believe I know what it was.
Okay. Well, people differ in their opinions, right?
They do.
Yeah. And Judge, could we approach for just a minute?
Yes.
Best laid plans.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's a thumb drive with a file in it. It may be a thumb drive that's having a few issues because it wanted to pull files and then it didn't. So we'll see if it will.
And it's here. Judge, I got it.
Okay. All right.
Surprise. Magical words. You did it. And Judge, I'm going to try to publish off of Exhibit 7 an email from, I believe it was from the Lolly Time, previously admitted exhibit number 7.
All right. Once you have that pulled up on your screen, let us know. And then
Judge, I'm ready.
Okay. I'll instruct the clerk this time to allow that to be published then.
Okay. Now, you previously mentioned about Phoebe, was your recollection was that it was Melanie Gibb. Is that correct?
I testified that I wasn't 100% certain of that, but I don't dispute that that's
Okay. So at the top, this is a text message from Phoebe from the Lolly Time to Lori Vallow. Would you read the first line?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks. I love you so much. I'm going to teach right now, teaching about discerning and shutting off dark portals.
Okay, and then the one below that.
I could see the darkness so clearing last night when I was teaching last night. Their eyes were dark like marbles.
Okay, now the date of those messages was when?
July 25th of 2019.
Were you aware during your investigation where Melanie Gibb was teaching on that particular occasion?
No, I'm not.
Okay. You are aware that Melanie Gibb taught classes, variety of different things about vibrations and about light and dark, correct?
I wasn't aware that she taught classes. I know there was a podcast and group discussions and things like that.
Right. She would go to encampments or she would go to programs and be a speaker talking about a variety of religious topics, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when Melanie Gibb talks about dark portals, is that something she's talking about that's consistent with the LDS faith to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. When she's talking about eyes being like dark marbles, is that also something that's consistent with being of the LDS faith?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Okay. And to avoid, and Judge, we can bring that down now. I'm done. But during your research, there were other individuals that talked about putting numeric numbers on people with dark and light, right?
There was one single instance in all of my review where Lori Vallow disputed a designation made by Chad Daybell. So that's the only other time I'm aware of anyone else putting those numbers on individuals.
Okay. And all I want to do is just have you confirm then for me. In the review of all of those 10,000 plus text messages, are you telling me that other than Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, they were the only ones who talked about dark and light and put a numeric number on someone?
I am testifying that the only times I saw those numbers being generated, with the exception of one occasion, were all by Chad Daybell.
Okay. Okay. And all of the people that were designated, well, so other than Chad Daybell, your testimony then is that nobody else put numeric numbers on people as it related to dark and light. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. You brought up a subject about the process of sealing. Remember that in the very beginning of your testimony?
It's part of the James and Elena story, correct?
Right. But you also explained that what sealing is in your definition, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I understood sealing to be part of a marriage process when two couples of the LDS faith go into a temple and they perform a private ceremony. Is that what you understand it to be as well?
Yes, when two people go to get married, correct.
Right. And that is a process in which, and I don't want to go into, we don't need to go into significant detail about this, but it's a religious symbolism to show that they have an intent of wanting to be together the rest of their life, right?
Correct.
And they're basically sealing themselves to each other in essence, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Has nothing to do with death or anything like that. It has everything to do with the celebration of the marriage ceremony, correct?
It's a marriage ordinance that's performed in LDS temples.
Okay. All right. Okay. And Judge, I'm going to stop there. That's all I have at this point, Judge. Thank you.
All right. That will conclude cross-examination of the witness redirect from the state.
Agent Hart, you were just asked about the sealing reference in one of those messages. Do you recall testifying about that before?
I do.
And you were asked specifically about it dealing with the marriage ceremony by Mr. Pryor, correct?
Yes.
And previously, did you testify that there are also sealings done for people that have passed away?
That's correct.
And when you referenced the James and Elena story, was that your understanding of what was being referenced at that time?
Judge calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Was that your understanding of what was being referenced in the James and Elena story?
Yes, the sealings being referred to in the James and Elena story are what they call proxy, meaning that genealogical research is done and that a man and a woman go in and, based on historical records, if two people had been married, they then perform that marriage ceremony in their behalf. That the two people performing the ceremony aren't getting married. They're a stand-in for people based on genealogical research who are being sealed.
And at the time that was done, that was in the November of 2018?
November 16th of 2018.
And at that time, was Charles Vallow still alive?
No, he was not. Or excuse me, yes, he was. I'm sorry, I was thinking of 2019.
2019. So in November of 2018, Charles Vallow was still alive.
He was.
And in November of 2018, was Tammy Daybell still alive?
She was.
And is part of the idea behind the sealing that you would be married for eternity?
Judge, leading question.
Sustained.
When we looked at those messages, if you recall, was the indication that Chad believed or was indicating he and Lori would be married eternally?
That's precisely what was stated in Chad's writing.
Through your investigation, were you able to determine where the teachings of light and dark originated as far as this particular group of individuals you were asked about?
They originated from Chad Daybell.
And you indicated Melanie Gibb was one of the individuals that would have received those teachings?
I believe so, yes.
You were asked some questions about levels and light and dark, and specifically in reference to Allie Bloomer. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Allie Bloomer a telestial relative of Chad or Lori?
Not to my knowledge.
And we talked a little bit about that telestial relative, the meaning of that, and Mr. Pryor put that slide back up. You'd referenced that it is the lowest kingdom. Would that also would telestial refer here on earth?
Yes.
So the reference was the telestial relatives were obstacles.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you learn if Charles was ever deemed dark?
Charles Vallow?
Charles Vallow.
He was.
Did you ever learn whether Tylee Ryan was deemed dark?
She was.
Did you ever learn whether J.J. Vallow was deemed dark?
He was deemed to have turned into a zombie, which
Judge, unresponsive.
Overruled.
is parallel to being dark, being inhibited by a dark entity.
And what about Tammy Daybell? Did you ever learn whether she was deemed dark?
Again, she was deemed to have been inhibited by a dark entity.
And based on your investigation and looking through these messages, who was the one that would determine if someone was light or dark?
Chad Daybell.
And of those 4 relatives that we talked about, are you aware of their current status?
All 4 are dead.
I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Blake. I don't think we got outside the scope of cross there or direct, so won't permit recross for this witness. That will conclude the testimony of Agent Hart. Is he going to be recalled potentially by either side?
He is going to be recalled by the state, Your Honor.
And he's going to be called by the defense as well, Judge.
All right. Agent Hart, going forward, then you're still under the court's exclusionary order, which disallows you from watching this trial or discussing your testimony or anybody else's testimony before you return to testify. I'll question you about that when you retake the stand in the future. So please abide by that exclusionary order. And with that, you may go ahead and step down, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome. Yes, I'll have the bailiff retrieve that exhibit, please. And where we took our break already this morning, we'll intend to go forward till lunch. Does the state have another witness to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Sydney Woodbury Shank. or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right. The court will note the witness has been placed under oath at this time, so I am going to inquire. This case has been live streamed and available for view by the public in general or anyone interested. So, Ms. Woodbury-Shank, have you watched this trial or observed any of the trial testimony since the trial began?
No.
Okay. Have you discussed with anyone else your testimony, anyone that has testified in this case?
No.
All right. Thank you for your responses then, Mr. Wood. If you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Could you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yeah, it's Sydney Shank, Schenk.
Ms. Shank, what state do you currently reside in?
I currently reside in Arizona.
Have you ever lived in Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes, in 2019, I lived in Rexburg, Idaho.
What were you doing there?
I was attending college at Brigham Young University, Idaho.
Were you working at the time?
I was not.
Okay. Were you looking for work?
Yes.
What kind of work were you looking for?
I, in the past, have nannied and babysat. I enjoy watching kids, so I went on a website called care.com, looking for a job opportunity to be a nanny.
Through care.com, did you ever meet a Lori Vallow?
Yes. So I posted a job listing that I wanted to nanny, and she replied to my listing, and we got in contact on the website, and then later messaged through text and set up a time for me to come meet her and her son JJ.
Where did you meet her?
I met them at her townhome in Rexburg.
And do you remember approximately when you met her?
Yeah, it was September 18th.
And did you, through that conversation, did you learn if JJ had any special needs?
Yes. So she mentioned, he has autism and that he had difficulty focusing at times and had some behavioral difficulties at times. And that he needed extra help.
When you met with her, did she say anything about her husband?
She did. She mentioned, as we got to know each other, that they had just moved to Rexburg from Arizona and that her husband recently passed away from a heart attack and that JJ was kind of struggling to understand that.
Did she tell you anything else about JJ?
Not really that day. Just, that he had autism and some difficulties.
Did she speak with you at all about a daughter named Tylee?
She didn't mention her name, but she did say she had a daughter that was living in town, attending college, and that sometimes she would come to visit and do laundry or come home for dinner and sometimes would babysit, but that she didn't like babysitting without being paid. And so she wanted someone else to come in and help her.
And so from your understanding, was this daughter living in a separate location than Lori Vallow?
From what I understood, yes.
And this was on September 18th of 2019?
Yes.
Did she hire you to watch JJ?
Yes. So we had discussed coming in the future and coming the next day. She needed to go to the airport to pick up a friend. And she needed some help watching him just for a few hours. So I came the next day on the 8th or the 19th to watch JJ.
Did she, and approximately how many hours did you watch him that day?
I want to say 3 to 4 hours.
Did Lori say anything to you about JJ's medications?
She did. She, when I arrived, explained like what to feed him and some activities to do. And then also that if she got home later, that I could give him some medication to help him sleep.
So tell us about watching JJ. What do you remember about that experience?
I remember him playing with the neighbor kids the majority of the time, and it was going fine. He was a fun kid, and he eventually went over to the next door neighbor's house to play, and I fed him some dinner before he left, and Eventually his mom was going to come home soon, so I went back and picked him up from the friend's house. And he seemed really upset and just sad. They had a little tiff about sharing toys or something, and he was pretty upset. And I tried to calm him down best I could, but he had some behavioral difficulties calming down and was getting a bit aggressive and angry.
Did you have any other contact with Lori Vallow that night?
I did. So she came home from the airport with her friend, and her brother was there, and she tried to help me calm down JJ. And just in the midst of kind of him freaking out, I just left and she paid me. Yeah.
Did you have any further communications with Lori Vallow?
I did. So a couple days later, I messaged her again, hoping to work again. This, from my understanding, was going to be a longer term job that I could work for her few times a week as she needed it. And asked when I could come back. And she said that JJ went with his grandparents for a month and that she was in Hawaii for a month. And that after that month had passed, I could reach out to her again to reschedule another time to babysit.
And did you ever try to do that?
I did. Yeah, I called her and texted her and never got a response back from that point on. I didn't speak with her at all.
So you never heard from her again?
No.
Did Lori Vallow ever mention the name Chad Daybell to you?
No.
So you, through your contact with her, you never heard of a Chad Daybell?
No, never.
Your Honor, that's all the questions the state has for now.
All right. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
It's still morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Do you have a recollection of about what time Lori Vallow returned home?
I don't know for sure, but it was around dinner times, probably around 5 or 6 at night.
Okay. You mentioned that it was about 3 or 4 hours that you watched JJ, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you, and this was Thursday, right?
Yes.
And then what time did you arrive to start the babysitting?
I don't know for sure, but must have been 4 hours before that. So around maybe 1 o'clock.
Okay.
I don't know for sure though.
And you mentioned that you fed JJ that day. You fed him dinner.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it possible it was after dinner?
That what was after dinner?
When Lori Vallow returned?
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't know about what time after dinner though?
No, not for sure.
Okay. Now, before you started babysitting JJ that day, Lori warned you about some behavioral problems, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Warned you how to distract him, do things to distract him, show him a show.
Yeah.
Or keep him out preoccupied because JJ suffered from a form of autism, from what I understand, correct? Right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And when Lori left, did she leave with anybody?
Yes, she left with her brother.
Do you remember what his name was?
I believe it was Alex.
Okay. And do you know about what time they left?
I would guess around 1 o'clock. Shortly after I arrived, they left.
Okay. And they were going to pick up a friend on Thursday that day, correct?
Correct.
And do you know the name of that friend that they were going to pick up Thursday afternoon?
I did not.
Did you happen to see her when she arrived?
Yes.
Can you describe what color her hair was?
It was a long time ago.
Okay.
From what I remember, I want to say blonde.
Okay.
But honestly, I don't remember for sure.
And a slender lady.
Yeah.
Did anybody mention the name Melanie by any chance?
I can't say for sure. I don't remember.
At some point later, did you find out who that other friend was?
No.
Okay. And you noted I read the officer's report about the interview with you. You noted that she came in and she didn't have any luggage with her.
Yeah, that's correct.
That struck you as kind of odd.
Yes. I didn't know how long she was staying, so, or maybe she left it in the car. I don't know.
Okay, you don't know.
Yeah.
But she didn't come in with the luggage, right?
No.
Okay. And you noted that there were some behavioral problems with JJ right off the beginning, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Something about going upstairs and he knocked a a mirror on the bed or something?
Yes, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
He was just kind of freaking out. And when we came home from the friend's house, he kind of threw like the ottoman and a chair down. And then he ran upstairs and wanted space. And I heard something fall, and it was the mirror. So I went up to check on him to make sure that he was okay. And I saw that, yeah, it was broken.
So from what I understand, you're telling me is that Lori Vallow warned you ahead of time that JJ had some behavioral problems.
Correct.
Maybe not to the extent you experienced, though, right?
Yeah.
And this was a handful of activity with JJ, right?
Correct.
Throwing a lot of things, correct?
Yes.
Misbehaving, tantrums,
Yes.
throwing things upstairs, throwing things downstairs,
Yes.
climbing up and down all over the furniture.
Yes.
And this was on the 18th, Thursday, the 18th of September. And you were alone with JJ when all of this was going on, right?
It was the 19th.
I'm sorry, the
Yeah.
19th, Thursday, the 19th.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then at that point, after you had sort of straightened things up in Lori's house, you went over to pick him up with the friend, right?
No, he was upset and throwing stuff after the friend's house.
Okay. But before he started throwing the stuff, he was over at a friend's.
Correct.
And was there a little bit of drama over there as well?
Correct.
Talk about that with me a little bit. What kind of drama did we have while he was over at the friend's house?
From what I remember, they were just upset about a toy or sharing a toy.
Okay.
And JJ had a hard time doing that.
Okay. So when, and I'm bouncing around for a reason, so please bear with me. When the person who showed up from the airport on the 19th, the only people in the house at that point would have been the person they picked up at the airport, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, and JJ, right?
Correct. Yes.
And at no point during that time did you ever see anybody else at the house. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. You never heard anybody mention the name Chad Daybell, did you?
No.
Okay. Now, were you aware that JJ and Tylee had a very close relationship?
No, I wasn't
Okay.
aware.
But interestingly, you noted to the officer that when Lori and her friend and Alex got home, you told Lori about, JJ's behavior.
Correct.
And to some extent, it was still going on, correct?
That's correct.
And at that point, you made note of the fact that Lori seemed to be acting in a particular way towards JJ, right?
Correct.
And you said it appeared to be a little overwhelming. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I felt, and maybe I was judging, but I felt as if she was too comforting to him and didn't try to correct that behavior. Because to me, throwing chairs and breaking stuff isn't an appropriate behavior. And instead of correcting that, she was more just emotionally there for him and like being very sweet and kind to him, which I guess is a loving mother. But to me, that was a little strange that she wouldn't correct that inappropriate behavior.
Right. And you viewed her behavior as over nurturing?
Yeah.
She went over the top.
Correct.
She was cuddling him too much.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And all of this behavior that you saw, the active behavior by JJ at that time, did that continue on while you were there? Lori was there, Alex, and this other person?
He seemed to calm down a little more once she came.
Okay.
And it improved a little.
Okay. And lastly, while you were there, the person that they picked up at the airport, when all of this behavior was going on and you were trying to explain to Lori, did the person who they picked up at the airport, did she ever use the word zombie?
No.
Did Lori Vallow at that time ever use the word zombie to describe Alex's erratic behavior?
No.
Did Alex Cox ever use the word zombie to describe JJ's erratic behavior?
No.
Did anyone in that house at the time, when JJ was acting up, use the word zombie?
No.
Did you ever hear the words from JJ using the words zombie?
No.
I have nothing else.
All right.
Nothing on redirect.
All right, that concludes the testimony of this witness then. Thank you for appearing today. Will this witness be recalled by either side?
Not by the state.
Ms. Pryor?
No, Judge. Oh,
Okay.
it's on, Judge. No.
All right, that concludes your testimony then. You may be released. Thank you for appearing today. All right, state have another witness lined up to call before we start lunch.
Yes, Your Honor, the state would call Dr. Josh Wilson.
Okay.
solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn and taken the stand, I am going to inquire about the court's exclusionary order. This case is being live streamed on the court's channel, and I want to inquire, have you observed any of this trial testimony before you took the stand today?
No, Judge.
Okay, have you discussed with anyone else their testimony that's been given in this trial?
No, Judge.
Okay, thank you for your responses. Ms. Beatty, if you'd like to inquire, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Wilson, can you please state your full name and spell your last name?
David Joshua Wilson, Wilson.
And you go by Josh?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you currently employed?
Madison School District in Rexburg, Idaho.
And what is your job title there?
I'm a building principal for Kennedy Elementary.
And Kennedy Elementary School is in Rexburg, Idaho.
Yes.
Were you employed as the principal of Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg in 2019?
Yes.
Do you recall a former student named Joshua Jackson or JJ Vallow?
Yes.
When, if you recall, did JJ enroll at Kennedy Elementary?
The beginning of September, I believe September 3rd was his first day of 2019.
Do you recall who, if anyone, accompanied JJ to enroll him in school?
Yes. His mother, Lori.
What, if anything, did his mother, Lori, tell you about JJ's enrollment?
That they were moving from Arizona. Her husband had just passed away from a heart attack, and that they were moving to Rexburg to be closer to family.
How long was JJ enrolled at Kennedy Elementary?
3 weeks. I believe his last day was September 21st.
And do you recall having any communication with Lori Vallow or anyone else about JJ's enrollment at Kennedy Elementary?
Yes. Mom had contacted the school. We were trying to get a hold of her to finish some assessments. JJ had special needs. And so we were in the process of finishing up assessments to see how we could help him be successful at school. We were trying to get a hold of Mom to finish that up. And Mom had informed us that they were moving, or that JJ would be moving to Louisiana.
And just really quickly, how did she communicate that to you?
Over the phone.
Okay. So, and what else did she tell you, if anything?
During that conversation, I had indicated that once they get over to Louisiana, just have that school that they enroll into request records, and we would be happy to pass those along. She then indicated that they weren't going to enroll in public school, that they were going to homeschool, that they had a cousin with similar needs, and that they would be homeschooling. And then I informed her that we would house JJ's records there at Kennedy, and whenever they chose to enroll in public school again, whether it be back in Rexburg or somewhere else, that's where the records would be.
And at any time after that conversation, did you receive any requests for JJ Vallow's records?
No.
Okay. And Your Honor, if I may have just a moment.
Yes.
And Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Beatty. Any cross-examination, Mr. Pryor?
Refer you as principal, or how can I refer to you?
Sure. Principal.
Principal?
Yep.
Okay. So principal, from what I understand, the discussion with Miss Vallow was by way of a phone conversation. Is that right?
Correct.
Did at any time was a child enrolled in the school at Kennedy Elementary?
Yes.
And did that child attend the school?
Yes.
And for how long a time did that child attend the school?
About 3 weeks.
Okay. And during that initial phone conversation with Miss Vallow, did the name Chad Daybell ever come up?
No.
Did you ever see Chad Daybell at the school picking JJ up?
No.
Did you ever have any mention of any kind whatsoever in the 3 weeks that J.J. Vallow was at your school of the name Chad Daybell?
No.
I have nothing else. Thank you, Judge.
All right. Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. That will conclude the testimony of this witness. Is the state intending to recall the witness?
No, Your Honor, he can be excused.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thanks for testifying. You're excused from any subpoena, and you can step down. Thank you. They have another witness lined up.
Yes, Your Honor, the state would call Wynn Hill.
Thank you.
Or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hill, now that you've been placed under oath, let me just ask you a few questions before you testify. Because this case is being broadcast and available for public view, I want to ask if you have viewed or listened in on any of the testimony in the trial up to this point.
I have not.
Okay. Have you discussed with anyone else their testimony they provided?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Beatty, you can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your full name and then spell your last name?
Yeah. My name is Wynn Hill, Hill.
And sir, where are you employed?
At Brigham Young University, Idaho.
And where is that located?
Rexburg, Idaho.
How long have you been employed by Brigham Young University, Idaho?
Yeah, I've been there 18 years.
What is your current job title there?
I'm a therapist in the counseling center.
And prior to being a therapist in the counseling center, did you have a different job title?
I did. I was the dean of students there. Yeah.
Were you the dean of students in 2019 and early 2020?
I was.
And in February, well, let me back up a little bit. As dean of students, did you have access to a student file management system?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a student management system. Yes.
Does that system allow you to look at it to determine who is currently enrolled?
Yes.
Does that system allow you to look at who may have been enrolled in the past?
Yes.
Does it allow you to look at who may have applied to the school and not necessarily enrolled?
Yeah, anyone who starts an application, yes.
Were you contacted by law enforcement in February of 2020 to do a records check on an individual named Tylee Ryan?
I was, yes.
Did you check that individual in the student file management system?
I did, yeah. They asked me to check the name Tylee Ryan, Tylee Vallows, and Tylee Cox, date of birth 9/24/02, and I did check that, yes.
Were you able to determine if this individual was a current student?
Yes, they weren't. In fact, we had no record of any of those names.
Did you have any record that this individual had ever even applied to
No.
BYU, Idaho?
Nothing.
Okay. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
And Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Beatty. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
No notebook, so it's going to be short. Did you ever have an occasion to talk to Lori Vallow on the phone?
No.
Did you ever discuss an application with anybody, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow?
Nope.
Did you ever discuss an application, or did anybody in your organization discuss an application with a Tylee Ryan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And obviously you'd never heard the name Chad Daybell in relation to any application process for Tylee Ryan. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Nothing else. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Either side intend to recall the witness?
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. That'll conclude your testimony then. Thank you for appearing. You're released from any subpoena, and you can go ahead and step down from the witness stand.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. All right. I discussed in a sidebar with counsel scheduling for the day. The morning's gone more quickly than the state anticipated in terms of lining up their witnesses. We're going to take the lunch recess at this time. We will take a longer break today in order to allow for appearance of afternoon witnesses. So the lunch recess will begin, and we will come back on for additional testimony at 1:00. Does that work with the state
Yes, Your Honor.
defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll be in recess until then.
All right, please.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right. We're at the conclusion of lunch. Here's the state ready to have the jurors brought back.
Yes, Your Honor.
And who will be the next witness being called?
Colby Ryan.
Okay. And is the defense ready as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Let's please have the jurors brought in.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, please offer the account for you, Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. We just completed the lunch recess and the state continues with its case in chief. The state may call its next witness.
The state calls Colby Ryan.
Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn, I'll just inquire, Mr. Ryan, these trial proceedings have been streamed live on the court's YouTube channel and open for public access. Have you reviewed or watched any of this testimony that's taken place?
No.
Oh, and actually,
I was just going to note, Your Honor, Mr. Ryan is not subject to the exclusionary warrant.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Mr. Wood. That's correct. So as a statutorily definite, with the definition here, he would not be subject to that. So disregard my inquiry. Mr. Wood, you can go ahead and proceed.
And before I do, Your Honor, may I be handed States Exhibits 6 and 4?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ryan.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes. Colby Ryan, Ryan.
Mr. Ryan, who is your mother?
Lori Vallow.
How many siblings do you have?
4.
Okay. Can you tell us their names?
Cole, Zach, Tylee, and JJ.
And Cole and Zach, what is your specific relationship or relation to them?
They're my stepbrothers.
Who was their father?
Charles Vallow.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes, that's an admitted exhibit, correct?
Yes, this is States Exhibit 6.
Okay. Yes, you may.
Mr. Ryan, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who is that?
That's my sister, Tylee.
What is your specific relation to Tylee?
She's my half sister on my mom's side.
So you share a mother.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, may I publish States Exhibit 4?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
And if you need a drink of water, I don't know if there's tissues up there.
Yeah, I'm good.
Who is that?
That is my brother, JJ.
And what is your specific relation to JJ?
He is my adopted brother.
Do you recall when JJ was adopted?
Yes.
Do you know who Charles Vallow was?
Yes.
Who was he?
He was my stepfather.
And when you say stepfather, how was he your stepfather?
He married my mom.
How long was he married to your mom?
Over 10 years.
All right. And what was your relationship like with Mr. Vallow?
He was my dad. It was good.
So is it fair to say you were close with him?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall when Mr. Vallow passed away?
Yes.
Or Charles Vallow? If I say Charles, we understand who we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall when he passed away?
Yes.
When was that?
July 11th, 2019.
How did you hear about him passing away?
My mom called me and told me that he had had a heart attack.
And do you remember about what time of day that was?
Between like 1 and 3 o'clock, something in the afternoon.
In the afternoon?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any reason to not believe her that that's how he passed away?
No.
Did you have any occasion to go over and to your mother's house that day?
Yes.
And where was that house located?
In Gilbert, Arizona.
Do you know approximately what time you went over?
I got off at work at 7, so around 7:30, 7:45.
What happened? What was the first thing you saw when you got there?
Tylee opened the door and hugged me, and she was crying. And then I saw my Uncle Alex sitting on the couch with a bandage around his head. And then I saw my mom in the backyard, and that was it.
Did you go into the house?
Yes.
Did you see your brother JJ there?
No.
Did you speak with Alex Cox at all that night?
Yes.
How did that conversation go? What did he say to you?
Objection, hearsay.
Statement of a co-conspirator, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Tell us about the conversation with Alex Cox. Well, and before we do that, what was your relation to Alex Cox?
He was my uncle.
And you testified you saw him with something white wrapped around his head.
Yes.
Did you speak to him at all that night?
I asked him what was on his head, and he said that Charles had hit him in the head with a bat and that he had shot him in self-defense.
And is that how you learned how your stepdad died?
Yes.
Did he tell you anything else about that altercation?
No.
And did you ever have any other occasion to speak to him about that altercation?
No.
You said you saw your mother that night. And what was her demeanor?
Calm, unrattled.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was crazy. So I was freaking out, and she seemed to not care.
And did you speak to your mother that night about how Charles had actually died?
Yes.
How did that conversation go?
She told me there was a fight and ran through it very quickly. And it was just in shock. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she just basically gave me a very quick version of the story.
Did she tell you why she had lied to you earlier?
No.
Do you remember if you asked her?
I don't remember.
Did you ever speak with Lori Vallow about Charles Vallow's life insurance policy?
Yes.
When was, do you know if that happened multiple times?
I know she'd mentioned it growing up. She talked to us about what would happen if either one of them, something happened to them, what would happen. I think it was a few weeks later that she brought up that she was not going to receive any of the money from Charles.
Okay, let's just take a quick step back. When you say a few weeks later, what do you mean a few weeks later?
After Charles was murdered.
Okay. And she told you then that she was not going to receive that money?
Yes.
From that conversation, was it your understanding that she had been expecting to receive that money?
Yes.
And okay. When Charles was alive, did you ever have occasion to speak with Lori Vallow about her and Charles's finances?
Yes.
Was that something that came up often?
Yes.
About how often? To the best of your recollection?
I would say maybe monthly, once a month.
And what was the general nature of those conversations?
From what I understood, Charles would work and then receive a bigger amount of money, and then it would kind of run out, and then they'd make another bigger amount, and then it would run out. So it's kind of the nature of the conversation would be that they were running low on money, something to that degree.
Okay. And was that a common theme then?
Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, the common theme that they were running out of money?
Yes.
Do you know who Tylee Ryan's father was?
Yes.
Who was that?
Joseph Ryan.
And I know that you and Joseph Ryan have the same last name.
Yes.
Was he your biological father?
No.
Okay. But did you take his last name?
Yes.
And do you know if Mr. Ryan is alive or deceased?
He's deceased.
And do you recall when that happened?
Summer of 2018, I think. Something around that time.
You don't remember the exact date?
No.
And were you aware if Tylee Ryan received Social Security benefits after Joe Ryan passed away?
Yes.
How did you learn that?
My mom told me that she would be receiving benefits.
And do you know if she received that monthly?
Yes.
Did you ever receive money from Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
How would that usually happen?
Venmo. She would Venmo me.
Okay. Would you ever ask her for some money?
I did, yes.
And about how often would that happen?
Maybe I could recall asking Tylee specifically a couple times. I would mostly ask my mom, and Tylee would be the middleman between those transactions. So I'd ask my mom, and she would tell Tylee to send the money.
Speaking of that, to your knowledge, did Lori Vallow ever send you money by sending it to Tylee, who would then Venmo it to you?
Yes.
And how did you know that?
I would ask my mom, and then she said, okay, Tylee will send it over to you.
Do you recall the last time you saw Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
When was that?
It's August 30th.
And where was that?
It was outside of my work in the parking lot.
Is that in Arizona?
It was in Mesa, Arizona, outside of a gym.
And what was the nature of that visit?
My mom was very vague and said that they were leaving. She brought Tylee and JJ, and Tylee was crying and didn't say anything really. And I hugged JJ, and my mom said that they'd be back in a few weeks to visit.
Did she tell you where she was going?
No.
Do you recall if you asked?
I did ask initially.
But she wouldn't tell you?
No.
Did you receive or did you exchange text messages with Tylee Ryan on September 8th of 2019?
Yes.
What was the nature of that text exchange?
I think I had asked her to send money. And I think we had talked earlier that day a little bit. I didn't talk to her directly, but I had heard her voice and they said that they were on a trip. And I think I'd asked her for money. I think that's what it was.
Okay. And did she respond? Do you recall?
Yes.
What did she respond?
I don't remember what she said exactly. I remember her last text that she said was just I love you and I love the girls.
And you said you heard her voice earlier that day. How did you hear her voice?
She was in the background of my conversation with my mom.
Right. And did your mom tell you where they were?
She said they're at Yellowstone Park.
Did you ever have a conversation with Lori Vallow after Charles's death about Tylee's Social Security money?
Yes.
What was the nature of that conversation?
So if I recall, she said that Tylee's money was not going to be everybody's money since she...
Judge, can I have some foundation as to what time, date, place this discussion took place?
So foundation objection, Mr. Wood.
Your Honor, I'll ask a few more questions.
Thank you.
Do you recall approximately when that conversation took place?
I don't.
Okay. Was it in person?
I don't recall. I think it was on the phone, maybe.
Okay. But it was after Charles's death.
Yes.
And just to be clear, you don't recall the exact date?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. What was the nature of that conversation about Tylee's money?
Judge, again, foundation.
Overruled.
You can answer the question.
Yeah. The initial question I had is, how are you going to take care of Tylee and JJ now? And I knew that she wasn't going to be receiving the money. So she said, we're going to supplement some Tylee's money for now. And I'm going to go work. That was what she said. And that was basically the nature of it. She said, we're going to start using Tylee's money to make it through. And I think that I don't know if they were receiving anything for JJ, but that was the nature of the conversation.
Okay. So you don't recall if she mentioned JJ receiving Social Security?
I don't remember, but I know about it. I just don't remember if she said that.
Okay. And do you recall if she said anything about her receiving Social Security benefits after Charles died?
No.
The last time you saw Tylee, was that also the last time you saw JJ? And I think you said that was September or August 30th of 2019.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about November 27th, 2019. Were you contacted by the Gilbert police on November 27th of 2019?
Yes.
What was the purpose of that contact?
They came to our door looking for Tylee and I think JJ as well. I specifically remember them asking about Tylee first.
Okay. And what did you tell them?
I said I didn't know where they were.
Do you recall if you told them about the last time you had seen them?
I think so.
At that time, had you been concerned about Tylee?
Yes.
Why is that?
Our conversations were not normal. The way her dialect and her text, the way she spoke wasn't matching up. And I had texted her for her birthday and just things of that nature. Just wasn't getting calls, wasn't getting any contact in a normal way, and was always avoided. So I thought maybe she was upset with me, but I just didn't want to pressure her because I know she'd been through a lot.
And so you mentioned text messages. Was there a change in those messages?
Yes.
How so?
Just little things like if you capitalize the letter I in periods and emojis, just things like that. Things just didn't sound right, and it just felt off when I was receiving those texts.
Do you recall the last time you spoke with her on the phone?
The last time I directly spoke with Tylee was on the 30th with JJ on FaceTime. So the same day that I saw them.
So you FaceTimed with them later that day?
Yes.
And then you never spoke with her again on the phone. But going back to those text messages, did you keep receiving text messages throughout September of 2019?
Yes.
And are those the messages that you felt were different?
Yes.
Okay. Did you respond to those messages?
Yes.
After the beginning of September, did you continue to receive money from Tylee's Venmo?
I think so.
Do you recall how often?
I think maybe a couple more times. So maybe 2 or 3.
And did you receive any more money from Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And how would she send that?
So she started sending money after I had not heard from her since that day. She started sending money on Cash App. I think she made a separate account and just tried to send money, and it kept denying it because it was a new account. I think it was all through Cash App at that point at just random times.
Okay. And was it in response to you asking for money, or was it just sent? Do you recall?
It was just sent.
Yeah. After Charles Vallow died, did you ever speak with your mom about her getting married again?
Yes.
And do you remember when that conversation was?
Maybe a few weeks after.
After he passed away?
After he was gone, yes.
What did she tell you about that?
It wasn't really a conversation. She just said a one-off thing like, I'll be married again soon. And I disregarded her and told her that I think that's crazy, or maybe she's talking about in the next life. It wasn't a real conversation. It was just a comment she made, and I completely dismissed what she said.
So she didn't give you any details about who she was marrying?
No.
When she was getting married?
No.
Other than soon?
Just soon, yeah.
Okay. Did your mom ever mention the name Chad Daybell to you?
I don't think so. No. I know she was becoming spiritual, if you want to call it that, for a long time, but she doesn't. I only knew Melanie. I didn't know anybody else that she was spending a ton of time with.
And when you say Melanie, which Melanie?
Melanie Gibb.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you contact your mother after November 27th when you were contacted by the Gilbert police?
I immediately contacted her after they left.
And what did you say to her?
I asked her, what is going on? Why are the cops asking where Tylee and JJ are? And she said, I think she asked me, like, what did they ask? And I said, they asked for Tylee and JJ. And I said, what's going on? And she just proceeded to say, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about anything. And then she's like, that's it. Like, I got it.
At that point, did you know where your mother was?
No.
So she had never told you where she was?
No. We speculated based off of the Yellowstone thing, but I didn't have an idea where she actually was.
And so you didn't know she was in Rexburg, Idaho?
No.
And she never told you that?
No.
Did you try to contact your mother on Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Did she respond to you?
No.
Did you ever have contact after that with your mother before she was arrested?
I think she sent an email not too long, maybe within a couple of weeks. And the nature of the email was, everything's fine. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about me. I've got Jesus on my side, blah, blah, blah. But basically just saying, it's okay. I've got things handled.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wood. Cross-examination, Mr. Pryor.
Good afternoon. Can you tell me how old you are?
28.
You mentioned a number of times that you were receiving money from Tylee and Lori. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And 2018, 2019.
Yes.
Sound about right?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Financially, is there a reason why they were sending you money?
We were just a young family and I just needed help and I was asking my mom for help.
You were a young family with children of your own?
Yes.
Okay, and just difficulty supporting yourself.
Yeah.
So your sister Tylee was helping out.
Sometimes, yeah.
And that was consistent with her character, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Very caring person.
Very.
Very kind person.
Yep.
She was, in many ways, more of a mother figure to JJ than Lori was. Would you agree with that?
I think she was his big sister.
Right. Very caring of JJ. Very, very protective of JJ. Would you agree with that?
She loved him. Yeah.
And she understood him better than almost anybody, correct?
Sure.
He had tremendous challenges as a young autistic, 7-year-old autistic child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of all your siblings, you would probably say that Tylee was probably the kindest, the gentlest, and the most understanding of JJ. Would that be fair?
Sure.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that Lori called you to let you know that Charles had died.
Yes.
She didn't tell you that Alex gunned her down in the house, right?
No.
She lied to you.
Yes.
That it was a heart attack.
Yes.
So you're Lori's son, natural son, right?
Yes.
So Lori Vallow lied to her son the first time, saying that Charles died of a heart attack, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of lying in a lot of places.
And Lori lied a lot to you, right?
Other people too were. Yeah.
But Lori lied a lot to you.
Yeah. And then, yeah.
And then you mentioned the name Melanie Gibb.
Mm-hmm.
Was Melanie Gibb in on this lying to you as well about covering things up?
I didn't speak to Melanie Gibb.
Okay. But Lori and Melanie were the best of friends, right?
You could say that.
Yeah. And Lori met Melanie because Melanie was teaching classes about religion and about various religious topics, and Lori gained an interest in that, and that's how that friendship started, correct?
I'm not exactly sure. She was at our Christmas party one time, and then she was there as her friend, so I didn't know what their exact connection was.
When was that Christmas party?
2018.
Okay. And the two of them were together, and it was abundantly clear that the two of them were very, very close friends, right?
Sure.
Okay. At the time that your mother notified you, you were at work, is that right?
Yes.
So did you get that message while you were actually working, or was it over a break, or how did that transpire?
So I was in the middle of my workday, and she called me, and then I went over there after work.
And where were you working at that time?
At Anytime Fitness.
Okay. And so you took a break. Do you need to take a break?
No, you're good.
Okay. You took a break, and your mother called you or texted you and said there was a heart attack.
Yes.
No mention of self-defense.
No.
No mention that Alex shot Charles in self-defense, right?
No.
She was clearly lying to her son, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the fight that occurred between Charles and Alex, Tylee was there, and she was implicated in that, correct?
Yes.
And she was present for that fight and that entire altercation, from what you understand, correct?
Objection. States facts, not in evidence.
Overruled.
Correct?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that your father isn't Joseph Ryan, correct?
No.
But are you aware that your mother in 2018 received a sizable life insurance policy from Joseph Ryan?
I am now, yes.
You are now? Like right now?
I mean, I heard that later on, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're aware that financially, Lori Vallow had a significant amount of money as of middle or late of 2018, correct?
Yes.
Okay. During this time that there was discussion with Charles about financing, was it Charles Vallow who was the primary financer of the family's expenses?
Yes.
Your mother chose not to work.
She worked, I think, in the beginning, and then I think he just took over. I'm not sure. I was a child.
Okay. So when there was financial issues, it was your mother putting this all on Charles to provide for the family. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And you already previously mentioned that you communicate with Tylee at least like once a month. Is that fair? Or was it more frequently than that?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
You communicated with Tylee at least once a month. Was that fair?
Growing up or
Well, in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Okay. And the manner that you would communicate was by text message.
primarily.
Okay. And how often would you communicate with JJ?
I mean, it really depends. Tylee and I would see them more often, so I didn't have much time for them not being around.
Okay.
So before that, it wasn't once a month. It was a lot more frequent. They
Right.
lived in the same place and I would go see them.
Okay. And when you communicated with Tylee, or excuse me, when you communicated with JJ, it was always Tylee there, right? Usually?
Yeah.
Not Lori.
She would be there too.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you saw Tylee on August 30th in Mesa, Arizona. That was the last time you saw them. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you had mentioned that Tylee was obviously upset.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any prior information that Tylee just did not want to go to Idaho?
No, because I didn't know she was going to Idaho.
Okay. So she was obviously upset about something.
Yeah.
And it was the day that they were packing up to leave to go to Idaho. Is that right?
Yes.
And prior to that time, there was no indication that Tylee was upset about anything else. Is that right?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. Do you remember that? And from August 30th, you then had a FaceTime call with both Tylee and JJ later that afternoon, later that evening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about what time that was?
Probably when I got home. So anywhere between 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay. And you don't know where they were at that point, though, right?
They were back at the house.
In Gilbert?
Yes.
Okay. They hadn't left, but they were preparing to leave.
They were leaving in the morning, from what I understood.
Was Tylee still upset about the fact that she was leaving for Idaho?
Not on the phone call, no.
Okay. Now, on the back in late November, you had then had an occasion to talk with your mother. Is that right? After the Gilbert police spoke with you?
Yes.
And again, your mother lied to you again.
Yes.
Was Melanie Gibb there?
Where?
On the phone? Any indication that Melanie Gibb was there listening in on the phone call?
No.
You don't know whether she was or not, or you just don't know?
I have no idea if she was there.
Okay. Now, your mother's a strong personality, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
She's not someone that people can tell her what to do. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily.
Okay. So you think she could be influenced very easily, right?
That's a big gap between not influential and influential.
Okay. But you would agree that your mother is one to speak her opinion when she has an opinion about a subject, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Did you have an occasion to ever interact or observe the way your mother talks to her friends? Let's say Melanie Gibb, how she interacts with someone like Melanie Gibb?
Yes.
And that sort of interaction between them, your mother was a wallflower, or did she tend to speak her opinion when she spoke with her good friend Melanie Gibb?
Can you define wildflower?
Wallflower, someone very passive who wouldn't argue, someone who would just accept the way things are.
She did not like confrontation.
Okay.
She avoided it. So take that for what it is. I don't know.
Okay. So if getting in a discussion with Melanie Gibb, she would avoid confrontation. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay. Did she ever tell you in late November, after the police called you, that JJ and Tylee were with Melanie Gibb?
No.
Judge, I think that's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Can we redirect?
Just briefly.
Go ahead.
You were just asked about kind of your mother's personality,
Mm-hmm.
Whether she was a wallflower, and you said that you believed your mom had a strong personality, but that
I'm going to object. I don't recall that testimony.
Overruled.
But you said you thought your mom could be influenced.
Yes.
Earlier, you testified that your mom had become more religious over the years, and you were asked if she could be influenced.
Yes.
Do you believe your mother was influenced by Chad Daybell?
Objection, Judge.
Grounds.
It's speculation. There's no foundation to base what he's basing this on.
It's a question of belief. It's overruled.
100%. I think she could be influenced. Yes.
Okay. And my question was, do you believe she was influenced by Chad Daybell?
Judge, again, I'm going to object. Foundation, speculation.
Overruled.
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right. On that very last point, if you'd like, Mr. Pryor, recross. If not, we'll be concluded with the witness. And just limited to that last line of questioning you objected on, I'll allow recross.
Your Honor, I would just note, I think that question was directly in line with his cross.
Understood. I'll allow the recross.
Judge, am I permitted to go forward?
Yes, but only on that last question or two.
Now, in August of 2018, or August of 2000, excuse me, August of 2019, you had never heard of Chad Daybell, is that right?
Correct.
And you testified previously that your mother said, and please let me get to the quote, and it was a few weeks after Charles passed away, and Charles passed away in July of 2019, right? You said, I will be married again soon, but she didn't specify who she was talking about, right?
Correct.
And at that point in July of 2019, you didn't know very much about Chad Daybell either, did you?
No.
Had never even heard the name, right?
No.
And then in August, almost September of 2019, correct?
Yeah.
You had never heard of Chad Daybell. You didn't even know where or why they were going to Idaho, did you?
No.
And then we fast forward to November, 2 months later, within 60 days, you have a conversation with your mother about where's JJ, correct? And at that point, you'd never heard or mentioned the name Chad Daybell. Is that right?
Correct.
And then subsequent to that, you mentioned the fact that your mother, there was a call and a communication where your mother had been locked up. And at that point, you had a confrontation call with her. And at that point, you never heard about Chad Daybell, correct?
No, in December of 2019, there was a release, and that's how we found out that she was married.
Okay.
And that the kids were missing, and that's how we found out.
Okay. So after December of 2019, after everything started processing, that's when you drew this conclusion that Chad Daybell must be influencing her. It wasn't anything up until December of 2019. Is that fair?
I mean, they ran away together. So,
well, I understand that. But prior to December of 2019, to your knowledge, Chad Daybell wasn't even in the picture. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right. All right. That'll conclude the testimony then of this witness. Is the witness going to be recalled at any point, Mr. Wood?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. All right. That'll conclude the testimony of Mr. Ryan then. Mr. Ryan, you potentially may be recalled at some point in this case. If so, you'll be contacted either by the state or the defense. Otherwise, you are permitted to step down, and that concludes your testimony for today.
Thank you.
Any further witness to call this afternoon? Well, I should say we've still got time. So who will the state be calling next, assuming we've got one?
Your Honor, the state will be calling David Warwick.
Very well.
I swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
All right. Now that the witness has been sworn, let me just inquire, Mr. Warwick, have you viewed or listened in on any of the testimony that's taken place in this trial since it started?
No.
All right. Have you discussed your testimony with anyone else?
No.
Very well. Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick, will you please state your full name for the record and spell it?
David Dale Warwick.
Will you spell it for the reporter, please?
Oh, spell it. Sorry. DAVIDDALEWARWICK.
Thank you. And Mr. Warwick, where do you live?
Pleasant Grove, Utah.
What do you do for a living?
A general contractor.
I'm going to ask you some questions, drawing your attention back to roughly 5 years ago. Are you familiar with the name Chad Daybell?
Yes.
How are you familiar with his name?
I think since 2012, if I recall.
When did you first become familiar, or how did you first become familiar with his name?
There was a book that he had done done a book with Julie Rowe. And I just knew that he was the author or publisher of that.
At any point in time, did you have any contact with Mr. Daybell?
At that time?
At any point in time?
Yes.
When did you first have contact with him?
He reached out to me to wanting to do a book with me.
Do you recall approximately when that occurred?
2015 is what I'm thinking that was.
How did he reach out to you?
He's communicated. He's called me, he's texted me, and emailed me. And I just can't remember which one was first.
Had you ever initiated any of that contact?
No.
What was your reaction to his request that you write a book?
I just I just said I needed to think about it, and because of the content, I needed approval from above.
Okay. So did you decide ultimately to write a book for him?
No.
After that initial contact, however it came, did he continue to reach out to you to request this?
Yes.
How often did he reach out to you?
Probably 3 or 4 times over a year.
How did he do that?
Text and email mainly. I think we only had 1 phone call.
What was your reaction to those continued requests?
I just said no.
At any point in time, did you ever have any personal contact with Mr. Daybell?
Yes.
When do you recall that first happening?
The first time was at a meeting in Rigby, Idaho.
And tell the jury about this meeting. What was the meeting?
It's they were having a meeting about priesthood power and dealing with the darkness of this world and evil.
Who was having the meeting?
John Miller.
And approximately when did this meeting occur?
If I remember right, it was fall of 2015.
And why did you have occasion to attend that meeting?
Because John Miller reached out to me.
Did you
ask me to come?
Did you know Mr. Miller before this?
I did not.
Did you have any understanding why Mr. Miller had reached out to you?
Yes, I had done a few firesides, and anyway, so people got to know me through others that way, and so he reached out to me thinking that I would be interested in this.
I think you indicated that this meeting occurred in Rigby, Idaho.
Yes.
And where in Rigby was this meeting?
Where?
Mm-hmm.
It was at his home.
Do you recall who all was in attendance at the meeting?
Not everybody. Most of the people I didn't know.
Who do you recall and was at the meeting?
John Miller, Larry Hilton, Tom Harrison, Bob Walker, Hector Sosa. Now, some of these guys I met because we carpooled up. So that's why I remember their names. And the others that were there, that's where I met Chad.
When you were at this meeting, did you have any occasion to have a conversation with Chad?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what was the conversation about and how did that come to be?
He just came up and said that he was going to go to his house, and he wanted me to come over. He said Julie Rowe and a few of her associates were coming, and they actually showed up at this meeting too. And anyway, I said, "No, I'm not here. I'm here for this meeting." And I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay because I was asked to be at this meeting by the host.
So, what was Chad specifically asking of you?
He just asked me to come with him.
And did you eventually do that?
Yeah, he went and talked to John Miller, and they were having a lunch break. And John said, "Yeah, go ahead and go. It'll be okay. Just we can just resume when you get back."
At that point, did you want to go?
No, I didn't. But there was some curiosity to what's going on. So, but I just went out of respect.
And where did you go?
We went to Chad's home.
Where was his home located?
In Rexburg.
What did you do at his home?
We walked around his property, and this is the first time I had met Julie Rowe also. And basically, she was helped telling him how the property was to be laid out and organized for tents to be set up and a building to be built for preparations.
Was did Julie Rowe explain this information? What was her basis of understanding?
My understanding is she had a vision, or she was having visions. I wasn't informed on the details of what was going on. It was more of a meet and get acquainted.
Who did you recall meeting anybody else at that meeting besides Ms. Rowe? Let me withdraw that and be clear. While at Chad's property, do you recall meeting anybody else besides being there with Chad and Ms. Rowe?
Yeah, there were several other men there, but I don't recall their names.
Did you ever have occasion to meet Chad's wife?
Yes.
And who was that you met?
Tammy.
When did you meet Tammy?
When we were in their living room, Chad had her come out and introduced us to his wife.
Was that at the same meeting that you were there with Julie Roll that Chad had brought you to?
Yes.
Okay. Did Tammy participate in the conversation or walking around the property?
No, she didn't.
Any understanding why she did not do that?
I just didn't feel like she was interested, but that was just my feelings.
How did that meeting eventually end?
When we got done walking around the property, we just left and went back to John Miller's.
Did you have any other interaction with Chad at that point, at that meeting?
No.
Do you recall any other occasions that you met Chad personally after that meeting?
Yes.
When's the next time that you recall having met with him personally?
There was a conference in Brigham City, Utah, that I was asked to speak at, and Chad was there.
To the best you can recall, approximately when was that conference?
2017 is my guess. That's the best that would be my guess. I don't remember exactly.
But it was after your meeting at John Miller's house?
Yes.
What was your interaction with Chad at that conference?
We just talked. I saw him over there at his booth when we had a break, and I went and just talked with him for a few minutes.
Anything of note in the conversation?
No.
Did you have any impressions at that point of Chad's just general nature and his demeanor?
No, he's just, Chad's always been very, very kind, very meek.
Anything else about the way he conducted himself or interacted with people at that point in time?
No.
When's the next time that you recall seeing Chad in person?
At Lori Vallow's house in Chandler, Arizona.
And when did that happen?
August of 2019.
What was your occasion for being at that meeting?
Lori, I was with Melanie, and we were doing a couple of firesides in Arizona. And Lori called when we were coming back down from the northern Arizona and said, "Hey, we got some friends here. We'd like you." They wanted her to bring me over to meet me. So they said they were just having like a luncheon. She had prepared food and just asked us to come and stop by.
When you say Melanie, are we speaking of your spouse?
Yes.
And who is your wife, just to clarify for the jury?
Who's what?
Who is your wife? What's Melanie?
Yeah.
What was Melanie's last name at the time?
Oh, sorry, Gibb. Sorry.
And you're still married?
Yes.
So who do you recall being at that luncheon or that meeting at Lori's house?
Chad, Lori, Melanie Boudreaux, I think was her name. Alex Cox, Zulema, and then there was a lady there named Julie.
Was it the same Julie Rowe?
No.
During that meeting, was there any conversation that occurred?
Yeah, it was sitting around a table and eating food, and conversation was happening while we were eating.
Anything else? What was the general subject of the conversation while you were at the meeting?
That they were talking about the 144,000 and about the gathering of the 144,000. And
I'm going to pause you there for the jury's sake. When you say they were talking about it, who was talking about the 144,000?
Chad and Lori, but they were all talking about it. It was not really a formal meeting. It was kind of a lot of conversation, and I was just picking up on what they were talking about.
To the best you can recall, what things do you remember Chad or Lori saying about the 144,000?
That they were responsible to gather them. That was their call.
Now, were these things that just one of them was saying? Let me withdraw that. Was Chad saying these things?
I don't remember which one was saying it.
but one of the two?
I would say it was one of the two because they were the host of this meeting.
Any reason to think that they both weren't embracing or believing whatever it is that they were talking about?
Yeah. Yes.
Anything else that came up in that conversation besides the 144,000?
They talked about they all have these special gifts they were given, and what they were gonna. They talked about they had multiple lives and done things in previous lives.
When you talk about these special gifts, did they elaborate at all on these special gifts?
It was there was. I just remember a couple. One was had power over the elements of the earth and had to be in certain places a certain time to facilitate whatever God was doing.
Judge.
There's more to come in the trial of Chad Daybell. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of our continuing coverage right here from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.